Watch this.
Idaho got more than $1 billion in COVID relief cash. It's a lot to keep track of. But one of the state's agencies is accused of misusing that money by the state's top attorney, and apparently confirmed by an audit. Mr. Labrador explains what that means. It's one of the things that makes Idaho, well, Idaho, the raising and herding of sheep. However, the industry has been sheared of its hold on domestic soil. Idaho ranchers aren't ready to let go completely. Firefighters are used to being sent out on, rescue calls, probably more animals than you think, but usually they're helping those stuck underground. Well, last week, they took their efforts to new heights. Baseball calls it the hot stove league. In Idaho politics, the offseason might as well be called the lukewarm legal league. That's the time when what went on during the legislative session is seeing some time with a legal or an investigative team. Well, this week, the Legislative Services Office released the findings of an audit into the Idaho Department of Health and Welfare. The report confirms what the Joint Finance Appropriations Committee suspected back in February, that Health and Welfare was misusing American Rescue Plan Act dollars, ARPA money. Health and Welfare denies any wrongdoing, but JFAC's suspicion is really how this whole process started, because on the side, Idaho Attorney General Raul Labrador has also been looking into Health and Welfare's use of those funds. But he's run into a legal battle over it. Andrew Bartline spoke with Mr. Labrador today about the audit's findings and what he can and can't do about it.
A 6-month process condensed down to 55 pages, referring the next steps forward.
This is not over.
Addressing Idaho Attorney General Raul Labrador.
They have a belief that civil liabilities are in place, and also that potentially criminal activity happened during this time.
Under JFAC's direction, the Legislative Services Office audited community partner grants under Health and Welfare because those dollars have specific strings attached.
The Department of Health and Welfare refuses to follow those laws, and they make up their own rules.
Through the appropriation bill, it was like ages 5 to 13 for learning loss and after-school programs. Mm-hmm. What did they do with the money then? Well,
they gave it to programs, number one, that did not only have kids 5 to 13. They didn't only spend it on children 5 to 13. And they also did not follow the guidelines on what the money could be spent on.
Health and Welfare argues they were following federal guidelines and denies any wrongdoing, including overspending by nearly $500,000.
The department is a little bit funny, in my opinion, is that, well, the number was a floor. It wasn't a ceiling.
Are you familiar with any appropriation bills historically being interpreted as this is the floor you can spend?
No, and in fact, that's what the Legislative Services said, that it has never been interpreted that way.
These are findings that Labrador tried to uncover himself, starting back in March, under the same direction of legislators.
Correct.
What did you find?
Well, so I haven't found anything yet because I've been fighting with the Department of Health and Welfare.
Or rather, with his own staff. Before Labrador took office, state attorneys wrote an opinion. It legally protects the department's actions.
And what I call a CYA letter, which is to cover yourself. You can determine what that A is for, but cover yourself. And this happens a lot when businesses do things that are inappropriate. They try to get a legal opinion saying that nothing that they did in the past was wrong.
And that's from Wasden's.
Correct.
Yeah, that wasn't your people.
That wasn't my people, and then they reissued the opinion when I became the Attorney General without telling me that they were going to reissue that opinion.
What do you mean they? Who is they?
The attorneys in Health and Welfare.
Attorneys that work for Labrador?
Yes.
And signed a Wasden-era opinion. But on a Labrador letterhead, the court is holding his office accountable to this opinion, meaning his office cannot investigate Health and Welfare further.
We're either going to appeal it or we're going to appoint somebody to do the investigation.
An investigation that opponents say is politically motivated. The comment comes from other political characters known within the State House walls.
A press release just came out earlier today by former Representative Greg Cheney.
Yes.
I understand he represents the other side of this.
He does.
He has used language such as witch hunt. This is the IFF and Raul Labrador playing politics right now, not exactly interested in seeking the truth, seeking what they want.
I don't pay too much attention to what Greg Cheney says, so.
What kind of response do you have, though, that the opposition in this is saying this is just a political move going after an organization that you don't like?
So interestingly, this is an independent audit. So that tells you that what Greg Cheney is saying is false. I think it's actually a shameful day for Idaho, that we have an administrative agency that thinks that they don't have to follow what the state legislature tells them to do. This is how we get to a point where people lose trust in their government. If they realize that the agencies are just going to make their own rules and they're not going to follow the dictates of the people. Because remember, the legislature represents the people.
Health and Welfare did not have a comment for us beyond that original statement from Director Dave Jepson that was released earlier this week. They stand by what they did was not wrong. They are doubling down that they have a legal opinion to back up that stance as well. And of course, that's the crux here, Brian. That letter, is it a legal opinion or not? As the AG's office says, he's retracted it. Also, this has gone through court before, another context as well. Judges have already said they haven't done anything wrong. So what can you do exactly to recoup those funds? I'm not sure, but Labrador said civil and criminal, those are both on the table. He's pushing forward with it.
Okay, going back to that letter with the Raul Labrador's letterhead, the AG's Labrador's letterhead, how does that happen? I'm still confused how that happens.
So there's 120 attorneys that work for the AG's office. You are going to inherit a lot of attorneys from the people before you. And so I imagine this would have been somebody under Wasden's administration. Then when Labrador comes in, he just inherits that guy.
Right.
Well, that guy works closely with Health and Welfare, and his opinions probably didn't change. Well, his boss's opinions seem to have changed. So that was the confusion there.
Curious if that guy still works closely with Health and Welfare, an attorney. All right, thank you very much, Andrew. All right, well, there's another emergency in the West Bonner County School District. Nobody's in danger unless that danger is a school district losing federal funding, going into debt, and overall not being in compliance with state law. After being sent a letter by the State Board of Education last week saying just that, and that their newly appointed superintendent, Brandon Durst, is, quote, unqualified for the job, the West Bonner County School Board called an emergency meeting for tonight. 3 action items on the agenda. Declare an emergency so Durst, who was appointed in June without the proper certification, can get a provisional certificate to be a school superintendent. They knew going in Durst did not have the 4-year full-time experience working with students while under contract with an accredited school. They hired him anyway. They also need Durst to apply for that emergency provisional certificate, something he says he hasn't done because he says there's a procedural error from previous administration, which is something the state board does not agree with. And they need Durst to reply to the letter sent by the state board last week. As for that letter, well, it was sent to the chair of the West Bonner School Board last Wednesday, and it reminds Mr. Keith Rutledge their decision to hire a non-certified individual as superintendent is a violation of state law. The letter also lays out a list of 4 areas where West Bonner is currently out of compliance with state requirements. The budget doesn't balance. They haven't had the buses inspected in time for the start of the school year, something that has to be done 60 days before they can be used to transport students. 3, for the 2nd year in a row, there's too many students with disciplinary actions against them, something that federally requires special education intervention. And 4, the district has not completed its federal grant application. And without it, the district cannot get any federal money. By the way, the Bonner County Daily Bee is reporting the special education director, who was just hired last week, has resigned. We are waiting for confirmation from that, from Superintendent Durst. The state board asked West Bonner County to come up with a plan to fix their issues by tomorrow. Not doing so would jeopardize school funding for a district that is already strapped for cash. Voters failed to pass a levy back in May, so they had to scramble to pay for athletics for this school year. And they've considered sending junior high students to the high school until they can pay to repair the old junior high school building, which was built in 1940. The emergency meeting is scheduled to start in less than an hour. Well, some things are just so Idaho. Some things like this. Every spring, thousands of sheep travel across Highway 55 in Ada County on their way into the foothills to graze for the summer. Drivers stop, they watch people line the street. They also watch, take pictures. It's a very Idaho thing to experience, especially in person. But that thing may be a thing of the past. Sheep ranchers in Idaho are worried the sheep may disappear from the state, saying the domestic sheep market has gotten so bad, they're not sure they can see a financial future. It has to do with what's happening outside of Idaho, outside of this country, according to 2 Idaho ranchers who are part of a national effort to save domestic sheep markets. Here's Joe Paris.
Sheep ranching in Idaho is a part of the fabric of the state. How about a high-level example? Governor Brad Little's Scottish-born grandfather, Andy Little, came to Idaho in 1884. It's before Idaho was even a state. Came here just to work with sheep, and he eventually earned the title the Idaho Sheep King. And sheep ranching attracted talented immigrants to Idaho from the Basque Country in the early 1900s. Sheep actually started to outnumber people in the area because of this success. If you fast forward to 2023, though, these days, Idaho sheep ranchers feel they're on the ropes.
If we don't get a handle on this, we're done in time, and not that much time.
Henry Echeverry is a sheep rancher out of Rupert, Idaho. Simply put, ranchers like him continue to battle heavy imports of lambs from places like Australia and New Zealand. He explains import lamb outfits are seeing benefits from currency exchange, as well as fewer guidelines that Americans must follow by law, making American prices just more expensive.
We understand what the situation is. We don't produce enough to meet the needs of the country. However, we need to be able to sustain our operations with a better product. And that's all.
It's not just us, heck, we can walk away, but we do love this industry, and we'd like to, and then they do this country a lot of good. This is my range right here.
Frank Schertz is a longtime Idaho rancher. You might recognize his work. He and his team bring sheep across Highway 55 every spring. He points to the market share of lamb as an indicator of the issues.
It's what, 73 to 77% right now is foreign lamb, and they just take more and more, and these range outfits, they're gone, and they're not going to come back.
Ranchers around the country are now pushing for this, a petition published by Protect American Lamb, a project under the auspices of RCAF USA Sheep Committee. It calls on U.S. Trade Advisor Catherine Tai to consider changes to the industry to support American operations. And that includes legislations or regulations ideas for tariffs and tariff rate quotas, a way that ranchers believe can even the playing field.
It's not going to change within a year, but I think they could get some legislation or something to not necessarily legislation, but some kind of regulation to offset the influx of so many imports, so many tons of lamb.
Ranchers are pointing to this graph published by RCAF. It shows the decline of sheep inventory as well as the number of operations in America, all steadily falling since 1992. Ranchers tell me the playing field of domestic versus import is simply unfair in this field.
We're the guys that pay the taxes and property taxes, taxes on our income and whatnot, you know. And those guys, like I said, they come in here duty free. But that's the way we do it.
Ranchers tell me they've been in touch with Governor Little about the issue, and they hope that he will push the topic at the upcoming Western Governors meeting in November. It's a tough one for ranchers. They tell me this isn't a PR stunt. This is reality.
Okay, Joe, you mentioned Australia in your story there. So what is the difference between what happens in the U.S. and Australia when it comes to these, well, rules and regulations?
Yeah, in places like Australia and New Zealand, for example, there's chemicals that they're allowed to use to keep away predators of the sheep. Well, the American government has outlawed a lot of those chemicals and those practices really dating back decades. So, for example, it would cost an American outfitter a lot more money to make sure all the sheep are taken care of, make sure that everything's under good form. Whereas in Australia, it's just so much cheaper because there's less rules.
That makes sense. All right. Thank you very much, Joe.
There's always habitat to watch.
This morning, their sights are set a little higher.
Well, these guys certainly, and this little construction project that we've been watching is keeping us entertained.
A couple of ospreys
They're busy building.
have decided to make the north side of this East End sign
Not something you see often.
home.
I wonder how many people from the highway here notice this.
Well, a lot of you noticed it as well. Remember that story back in April? We hung out with Larry and Marlene Norman there as they sipped their grande pikes, that is. And they watched two osprey build a grand new home on the top of that sign. At the time, we thought it was a peculiar perch for a nest, right next to the traffic of a highway and the traffic of a Starbucks drive-thru. But months later, the nest was confirmed fortunate for the fishhawks. Bobby Moeller sending us these pics of the osprey offspring back in July. 3 of them, apparently, and one proud papa there, or mama, can't tell which. Anyway, last week, one of those young ones got themselves caught in a bit of a tangle with its own nest. So someone noticed again, and being a good neighbor, they called for help. Who would you call to help an osprey? Well, someone from Eagle, to whom rescue is routine. Any call for help, especially those involving animals, is usually a call directed to the fire department.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I mean, the ducklings, you guys see the ducklings all the time, right? In the springtime, we're on duck calls all the time.
For Eagle firefighters John Ford.
Were you with us with the raccoon?
And Joel Hudson.
Like 4 weeks ago?
Nope.
So 4 weeks ago, we had a call for a raccoon that was stuck in a fence.
Animal rescue is just part of the job.
It does happen occasionally.
Yeah.
It just...
And people don't know who to call,
yeah,
so they
I think it's just...
call us, and we go and try to help out.
Which is what they did last Thursday when their captain told them about a call concerning one of the ospreys in this nest.
We've got a juvenile osprey that's got netting wrapped up in its talons, so we're going to go see what we can do to help out.
To help out, Joel and John jumped in the ladder truck. But a banded baby bird of prey and its worried mama.
Yes,
yeah.
That was a big concern that we had.
Well, that wasn't their only concern.
And then we found a wasp nest was in the nest underneath, and so there were wasps flying all around.
So, outfitted in full gear for protection, they were given direction by the Department of Fish and Game. Number 1, try to cover its head so it doesn't think it's being attacked.
So I tried to throw our traffic vest over it, but it flapped its wings a few times and its head came out of one of the holes, so it was watching me the whole time. And then just hold it firm but gently. I'm like, okay, all right, I'm gonna try that. It's not exactly what happened, but we got it out of there all right. It worked.
On the ground, Joel handed the bird to a Fish and Game officer, who took about a minute to untangle the talons. Then Joel and John put the bird back in the nest. And that was it.
That was it, yeah.
Not really a big deal, except to their kids who saw it on social media.
She's like, hey, look what Dad did today. I'm like, Dad, was it cool? Was it heavy? I'm like, yeah, it was really cool. It wasn't heavy at all.
I mean, unless you're talking about the weight of being All right, I won't say it.
That's one of the unique things about the job is you truly don't know what you're going to get every day you come to work. You're like, what are we going to go do? We're going to go help an osprey that's stuck in a nest? Like, okay. We'll do our best.
However that goes.
Well, it went pretty well, apparently. The whole operation took about 30 minutes, and while they were up there, Joel and John said they were asked to kind of clear out any other loose pieces of the nest that could catch another osprey. They said there was an orange tie-down in there, there was some electrician's cord, even a piece of a computer keyboard. These birds just kind of gather everything up, but mission accomplished.
Well, on the heels of our soggy Monday, we are not out of the woods yet as far as heavy rain goes. Look at this storm cloud. This is our sky cam facing off to the west-northwest. This is an ominous cloud, but blue skies off to the side, and there's the sunshine behind it. So if you're not getting hit with storms this evening, you may be seeing those storms developing off in the distance. It's a very comfortable evening in Boise. We're sitting at 77 right now after topping off in the mid-80s earlier this afternoon. Winds out of the west-northwest at 17 miles per hour, and that humidity is on the rise once again. Plenty of available moisture out there, triggering or helping trigger, I should say, all of these isolated thunderstorms. The one of biggest concern right now is in northeastern Malheur County, parts of Washington County as well. Weezer, you're almost out of it. There is a severe thunderstorm warning in place. That's this orange polygon through 545. It is slowly moving off to the north. You can see the line of storms and some outflow winds, though, stretching almost to Cascade. Long Valley, Crouch area has been seeing some lightning strikes and heavy rain as well. Temperature-wise for the rest of the region, we're in the low 70s in Sun Valley, upper 60s for McCall. Beautiful in Twin Falls, 86, but could see a couple of storms still before the evening is over and done with in the Magic Valley, so you're not completely out of the woods. High temperature for Boise today will be just about 85 degrees. And then as we look ahead, those storms will taper off by early tomorrow morning. Will dry out for the most part midweek for the rest of the extended period. And then we're hot and sunny this weekend. Here's a look at that for the 7-day. You can see temperatures hovering in the upper 80s Thursday, Friday, and then we get hot over the weekend Saturday, Sunday, low to mid 90s. That is unusually warm for this point in the month of August, especially Monday at 95 degrees. That'll be a good 5 to 7 degrees hotter than average all the way through the middle of next week.
All right, throughout the show, we ask you for your text messages. We also like your questions as well. Some of them we can't answer right away, so we save them for times like this question from Ruth. She'd like to know why the bell in the tower at the Boise River, well, it hasn't rung since COVID. Is that true? Is that true? Anybody else notice that? Has it been 3 years since we've heard the peal of the bell in the tower? Well, I guess Ruth is right, sort of. According to Boise Parks and Recreation, the Boise Depot bell rang as recently as March of 2021, and that was to honor the 1-year anniversary of the first COVID-19 case in Idaho, but it has not rung since then. That's because the depot has been going through some ongoing maintenance, and that means, I should say, no bell ringing. But Boise Parks and Rec said they hope to bring it back soon. Before COVID, you might remember, the depot bell, it rang daily, 8 a.m., noon, and 5 p.m., which is a lot of ringing, a lot of echoes possibly for those living in that area of the Boise Bench. Hope that helps, Ruth. And if anyone else has any other questions that you would like to have us answer, always text them to us, 208-321-5614, or find us on email, 208@ktvb.com. Don't forget your name and, of course, the hashtag, the 208. Told you we take your questions, even hypothetical ones like this one about Department of Health and Welfare misusing money. GOP audit of an independent department supported by a GOP attorney general isn't one-sided. Bonner County school crisis is what happens when right-wing extremists are in charge. Voters need to wake up, says Jack in Boise. That first one, by the way, was from Dave. This last one, sheep farmers want more regulation. What about letting the free market decide? That's Carol from Meridian. That's kind of how a lot of other people have said, or what they've said today in regards to the sheep ranchers and those that are raising them on our foothills. We'll see you tomorrow.